Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Well, Errol Spence delivered for gamblers. He got the KO. You beat the even money bet on the casino, right? You actually got better odds because Spence was able to deliver the KO, right? He first man to stop Leonard Bundu. Well, now he's the mandatory, right? He's the mandatory for Kell Brook at 147 pounds. Let's be real here. In my opinion, that fight never happens, right? Kell Brook weighed 176 pounds, 1 pound above the light heavyweight limit for the 30 days before the fight weigh-in for his upcoming match against middleweight champion Gennady Golovkin, right? When you see a fighter let his body go in a fight in which he's moving up in weight class, the odds of that fighter then being able to drop down multiple weight classes diminishes greatly. I don't think Kell Brook ever wants to fight again at 147 pounds. Let me point out, too, that if he tries, if he does what Roy Jones did, right, drops down from heavyweight. In Jones's case, it was really in the 190s, right, cruiserweight. Drop back down to light heavyweight to fight Antonio Tarver in a rematch, then you need to circle Errol Spence's name on your list of upcoming fights in which you're going to consider taking the underdog. Because I'm just telling you, when a fighter tries to lose weight to get back down to that lower weight class, that fighter, at least for several fights, is dead in the water. He's not himself, right? Look up Chris Bird, the guy who beat Vitaly Klitschko, right? The guy who was heavyweight champion. Late in his career, he actually tried to drop back down. Chris Bird was, one of these guys who really wasn't a real heavyweight. He was kind of like Steve Cunningham is right now. I'm just telling you, when he dropped back down to try to fight at lighter weights, he was dead. Right now, Errol Spence has never lost. Kell Brook relies on speed, movement, right? Foot speed and hand speed. I'm just telling you that, in my opinion, Kell Brook knows he can no longer make 147 pounds. This would be like asking Bernard Hopkins, after he went from middleweight to light heavyweight, to drop back down to middleweight. Even though Hopkins is a guy who didn't have a donut for over a decade, even though Hopkins is a guy who always kept himself in shape, quite frankly, that would have been an impossible task. Right now, I have doubts today. Today is August the 22nd. I have doubts today whether Kell Brook is going to comfortably make 160 pounds for his fight against Golovkin, right? Because looking at Kell Brook at 176, his body just looked too tight, right? I didn't see where he had the weight to lose. So if I have doubts about Kell Brook getting down to 160 for his upcoming fight, you can imagine, I believe there is no chance for Kell Brook to ever drop back down to 147 for a fight against a young, hungry, unbeaten lion like Errol Spence. That fight's not happening, in my opinion. If you hear that it is happening, and the only way it would be if Kell Brook loses to Golovkin, right? Because if Kell Brook beats Golovkin, I believe Kell Brook is then going to try to campaign at middleweight, right? If Kell Brook loses to Golovkin, I believe the loss is going to be devastating. I believe the loss is likely to be by KO. Right? I believe the loss is going to be such that Kell Brook is not going to be able to get back in the ring for a while. He's going to have to recover both physically and psychologically. Right? Errol Spence is not going to put his career on hold. Understand, the sanctioning body's not going to put their title on hold. I'd be surprised if Kell Brook decides to go back down to 147. Keep in mind, you have big names and big box office at 154 pounds, notably Saul Alvarez. If Liam Smith beats Saul Alvarez, which is a distinct possibility, right, Kell Brook, Liam Smith would be an epic UK domestic dust-up, sure to sell out most venues in that country. Right, so my first thought here is simply that this fight's not going to happen. I know Errol Spence is talking about going to the UK to fight Kell Brook. That fight only happens if Kell Brook can make weight. Right? Let's be real here. Let me point out, too, I know many of you are going to write me. I have a boxing hardcore crowd here online. Many of you are going to write me about how Floyd Mayweather jumped up to 154 pounds. Right? How Henry Armstrong once had 3 of the 8 belts then in boxing at one time. But what I want you to do is to research those guys. Right? You're going to find out that a lot of these guys didn't gain the weight to fight at the higher weight class. What I'm going to do is challenge YouTube right here. Show me the fighter who went up 2 weight classes, 147 to 160, or any 2 weight classes, and then weighed 16 pounds above the weight class 2 weight divisions up, like Kell Brook has, who was then able to drop back down 2 weight classes to his original weight and still be himself. Right? I don't think it's going to happen here. I think Kell Brook basically has let all of us know, I'm not going back to 147. Right? I think he's done with 147. For marketing purposes, I'm sure he hasn't yet formally abdicated that crown. Right? But expect it to happen. Right? As for his fight against Golovkin, I think the public needs to take Golovkin seriously. Golovkin knows Kell Brook can't fight inside. Right? So Golovkin basically has said, look, if you don't run, if you try to stand and trade with me, you're going to get knocked out. Right? Abel Sanchez, his trainer, believes the KO happens in the first half of the fight. Right? I believe the public needs to be prepared for that. Right? Kell Brook really is going to have to fight the fight of his life to beat the middleweight champion. So if Kell Brook loses at middleweight, even if he has a belt at welter, I think he's going to see the writing on the wall and realize that he cannot lose the 13 pounds to go back down to 147 against a young lion like Errol Spence. And if he tries to, and if Spence is the first fight he has, right, after losing to Golovkin, I think Kell Brook's in a world of problems, right? He's going to lose badly here. Because I'm telling you, you need to give fighters a chance to heal after devastating losses. And understand, as I make this video, Kell Brook is unbeaten. Right? Losing to Golovkin, this is different than Amir Khan, who had lost before, losing to Canelo. Right? Losing to Golovkin is going to take a while for Kell Brook to mentally come back from. Right? The last thing he's going to want to do is to hit the sauna, lose weight. Think about the weight difference. He weighed 176, 147 is 29 pounds down. Right? Kell Brook's not going to lose the weight to get to 147. Right? He's almost certain, by the way, when he enters the ring against Golovkin, to weigh in the 170s. Kell Brook's not going to lose the weight to fight a young lion like this. And if he does after a loss, well, I'd have to take Errol Spence in that fight. I don't care where it takes place. Anyway, let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.